Before you judge, let me just say, I never wanted any of this. I never set out to destroy anyone or to become the kind of man who could watch a company collapse and not flinch. But when you've given your life to something and they laugh in your face, something inside you changes. I lost everything I thought I was, and in the process, I took everything from them. It's strange how quickly a single moment can split your life into before and after. For me, it happened on a cold February morning in 2023 in the city of Providence, Rhode Island. I'd spent 12 years at Northstar Distribution, a logistics firm with a reputation for squeezing every ounce of value from its people. I was 38, a supply chain optimization specialist, and I'd built my entire adult life around the idea that hard work and loyalty would eventually pay off. My name is Daniel Mercer, and if you know anything about the fall of Northstar, you probably already hate me. That morning, I walked into the office of our CEO, Leonard Price. His corner office was all glass and steel, perched on the 22nd floor, overlooking the frozen river. I'd spent weeks preparing for this meeting. A 65-page portfolio of every achievement, every algorithm, every late night I'd poured into making Northstar the best in the region. I'd cut delivery times in half for our biggest client, Halcyon Medical. I'd saved the company millions. All I wanted was a 10% raise, just enough to bring me in line with the market. Leonard didn't even look up from his phone at first. When he finally did, he glanced at my portfolio, then burst out laughing. 10%? After 12 years? Danny, you really don't get how this works, do you? His laughter echoed around the office, bouncing off the glass walls, sharp as broken ice. Everyone's replaceable here. Even you. If you think you're worth more, go try your luck somewhere else. I stood there, frozen, clutching my portfolio. I'd always been the kind of guy who avoided conflict, who apologized when someone bumped into me in the hallway. But something cracked inside me then, not my heart, but the foundation of everything I'd believed about work, loyalty, and fairness. I nodded, quietly gathered my things, and left his office. I didn't say another word. Back at my cubicle, a cramped little corner on the 8th floor surrounded by empty desks, I stared at my computer screen. The company newsletter flashed an article about Leonard's innovative leadership, crediting him for the very system I'd designed. My phone buzzed with reminders for meetings I'd set up, projects I'd led, crises I'd solved, but none of it mattered. I was invisible. On my desk was a photo of my parents. My dad had worked 30 years at a textile mill in Fall River before it closed down. Loyalty matters, he'd always said. My mom believed it too. I'd built my life around that idea, but now it felt like a joke. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a battered black notebook. Inside were years of ideas, algorithms, process improvements, little side projects I'd tinkered with on weekends and late nights. I'd always documented everything just in case. Most of it I'd built on my own laptop at home on my own time. The most valuable systems, the ones Northstar used to win the Halcyon account, were all in there, with dates, times, and notes proving they were my personal projects. I'd never signed over the rights. The company's boilerplate contract only covered work done on company time, with company resources. Leonard and his lawyers had never bothered to check. They thought I was just a back-office function. They didn't even know my name. I stared at the notebook for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I'd saved but never called. Marcus Lee, the operations director at Orion Freight, Northstar's biggest competitor. He'd reached out a few times over the years, always with the same message. "We value innovators here. The offer stands whenever you're ready." My hands shook as I dialed. "Marcus, it's Daniel Mercer. I think it's time we had that conversation." He sounded genuinely pleased. "Danny, I was beginning to think you'd never call. Dinner tonight?" That night, we met at a steakhouse downtown. Marcus was sharp, attentive, and he'd done his homework. "I've followed your work for years," he said, sipping his water. "Those supply chain algorithms for Halcyon were revolutionary. We tried to reverse engineer them, but we couldn't. That's when I knew we needed the mind behind them." I laid out what I wanted: recognition, a leadership role, stock options, and fair compensation for any personal innovations I brought with me. Marcus didn't hesitate. "We have a proper IP acquisition process. You'll get paid for what you've built, and your name will be on it." I showed him my notebook, the documentation, the emails. He nodded, eyes wide. Northstar really dropped the ball, didn't they? 2 weeks later, I handed my resignation to Leonard. He barely glanced at it until I told him I was going to Orion. That got his attention. His face went pale. "You're making a mistake, Danny. We're about to expand our contract with Halcyon. You built the model for that proposal." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm leaving." He tried to play it cool. "We should talk about retention. Maybe that raise you wanted." "It's too late," I told him. "Orion's offering triple my salary, a leadership role, and stock options." He laughed again, but it sounded forced. "They're overpaying. You'll disappoint them." "We'll see," I said, and walked out. My last 2 weeks were oddly peaceful. I trained my replacement, a nervous recent grad named Kevin, backed up all my documentation, and made sure I had copies of every email where I'd shared my personal innovations with Northstar without ever formally transferring ownership. On my final day, the company's legal counsel, Patricia, called me in for an exit interview. She slid a stack of papers across the desk. Standard non-compete, confidentiality, affirmation you're not taking company property. I read them carefully. "I'm not signing the non-compete," I said. "It wasn't in my original contract." She frowned. "It's standard now." "Not for me," I said. "And I'm not taking anything that belongs to Northstar, but I am taking my personal intellectual property. It was never acquired by the company." She looked confused. "What personal property?" I opened my notebook and showed her the dated entries. "These algorithms and systems were developed on my own time, with my own resources. Northstar used them, but never acquired them." She flipped through the pages, her face draining of color. "These are the core systems we use for everything." I nodded. "Yes, and they're mine." She stared at me, then at the notebook. "I need to make some calls." "Do what you need to do," I said, and left. I walked out of Northstar's headquarters for the last time at 6:03 p.m. on a Friday. By Monday morning, I was sitting in my new office at Orion, a corner suite with a view of the harbor. My team, 5 algorithm specialists, looked to me for direction. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. 6 weeks later, we rolled out my systems at Orion. Delivery times dropped by 35%. Operating costs fell by 20%. Our sales team approached Halcyon with data showing we could outperform Northstar by a wide margin. Halcyon switched their contract to Orion. The news hit Northstar like a bomb. Leonard called me 3 times in one day. I let it go to voicemail. The third message was desperate. "Danny, we need to talk. Consulting opportunities. Name your price." I didn't call back. 2 days later, I found Leonard waiting by my car in the Orion parking garage. He looked haggard, his suit rumpled. "You put hundreds of jobs at risk," he said. "Northstar is facing a crisis." "I didn't take anything that belonged to Northstar," I said. "I took my own work. Your legal team never did their job. You never valued mine enough to care." He stepped closer, voice low. "We'll double whatever Orion's paying." I shook my head. "You told me everyone was replaceable. I'm just following your advice." The next quarter, Northstar's stock plummeted. They laid off 180 employees. The news called it a catastrophic loss of technical capability. Leonard resigned under pressure from the board. I watched the announcement from my office, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. Then came the lawsuit. Northstar sued me for theft of intellectual property. Their case fell apart when my documentation proved I'd developed the core algorithms as personal projects. The judge dismissed the case, noting that Northstar had failed to secure proper ownership. The morning after the case was dismissed, Leonard showed up at Orion. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. "You destroyed everything," he said. "No," I told him. "You did that when you decided people were disposable." He stared at me, searching for some sign of regret. "You planned this." "I just stopped letting myself be undervalued," I said. "You could have prevented all of this with a little respect." He left without another word. That evening, I got an email from Halcyon's procurement director. "The implementation exceeded our expectations. Delivery times are 40% better than before. We're expanding our contract with Orion." I forwarded it to Marcus with a simple note. "This is just the beginning." My name appeared on the algorithm patents. My photo hung in the Orion lobby. My team grew to 15, including several former Northstar employees. I made sure they were recognized and compensated fairly, but the guilt lingered. I thought about the people who lost their jobs at Northstar, who couldn't find new positions, the collateral damage of Leonard's arrogance. I carried that weight, knowing that justice for one person can mean hardship for others. 6 months into my new role, the full impact of my decision was still unfolding. Northstar's stock hadn't recovered. Industry analysts wrote case studies about their failure to manage talent. Orion claimed 25% of Northstar's market share. One Tuesday afternoon, my receptionist called. "There's someone here to see you." She says she worked at Northstar. I found Maria, the former head of customer service, standing in the lobby. She looked tired, clutching her purse. "Danny," she said, "I lost my job last week. So did my whole department, 37 people." I felt the weight of her words. "Maria, I'm so sorry." She stared at me, eyes hard. "Are you? Everyone says you're the reason Northstar's falling apart, that you stole something and brought it here." "I didn't steal anything," I said, explaining the documentation, the court case. She listened, unmoved. "I'm 56. Who's going to hire me now?" I didn't have an answer. After she left, I sat in my office, staring at the city lights. I thought about all the people who'd been caught in the crossfire. I thought about my dad, who'd lost his job when the mill closed. I thought about the years I'd spent believing in loyalty, in hard work, in fairness. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. A few weeks later, I ran into Kevin, my old replacement, at a conference. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. "They're talking about shutting down the whole department," he said. "Since you left, nothing works right. They can't fix the systems." I offered him a job at Orion. He accepted on the spot. Over the next year, Orion continued to grow. We won contract after contract. My team became a family, loyal, driven, recognized. I made sure no one ever felt invisible, but the past never really left me. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up sweating, dreaming of Leonard's laughter, of Maria's hard eyes, of the empty desks at Northstar. I'd wonder if I could have done things differently, if I could have saved more people, if I could have been less ruthless. But then I'd remember that morning in Leonard's office, the way he'd laughed at me, the way he'd dismissed 12 years of my life. And I'd realize that sometimes the only way to survive is to stop letting yourself be used. I never set out to destroy anyone. I just wanted what I was worth. But in the end, I learned that in business, as in life, nothing is ever simple. Every victory comes with a price. Every act of justice leaves a scar. So if you're reading this, wondering if you should stand up for yourself, if you should demand what you're worth, know that it's never easy. You'll lose things you can't get back. You'll hurt people you never meant to hurt. But you'll also find out who you really are. And sometimes that's the only thing that matters, because in the silence that follows, when the laughter is gone and the glass walls have shattered, you'll know that you were never replaceable. Not really. Not ever.